You can avoid type 2 diabetes with a free diabetes prevention class. Call 312-746-4835 or visit chicagocaresdpp.org. That's 312-746-4835. Paid for by the Illinois Public Health Institute. You can avoid type 2 diabetes with a free diabetes prevention class in your community or online. Call 312-746-4835 or visit chicagocaresdpp.org to join and learn skills to live healthier. New classes are starting now. Call 312-746-4835 today. Paid for by the Illinois Public Health Institute.
Welcome to episode 167 of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris, and Beer in Front is a proud member of the OddPods Media Network. But do something a little different this week. I'm going to put out 2 shows. Lately, there's been a lot of interviews, and I kind of missed these little quick 15-minute ones that I, used to put out all the time. So I'm going to put this interview show out right now. This is a good one. This is with Ryan over at Soundtrack Your Life. That was a lot of fun. We talked music, soundtracks, beer, and everything else. So I'm going to have this one out, and in a couple days, I'm going to put out a regular 15-minute one where I'll have the beer news, the beer in front. So I'm going to try something a little different. We'll see how this works out. Not sure, you throw enough stuff on the wall and hopefully something sticks. So we'll see if this format works. So stay tuned, listen to this show, and then listen in a couple days for the abbreviated Beer in Front, but listen to both, because at the end of the week, I'm going to announce details where you could win a free Beer in Front t-shirt. It has the new logo on the front with the beer glass. On the back, it has a Chicago flag with the old Beer in Front logo. And on the sleeve, it's going to have a cart, because you could put it in the cart. So listen to both shows. I might have it on this show. I might have it on the next. That's what we do in the business. We tease it. We make you listen to both to get a free what people won't do for some free shit. But I'll announce at the end of the week ways that you could win a free shirt, and I'll give that away next week. So listen to both shows. Before I get to the interview with Ryan, if you're a listener of the show, you've noticed in the past couple of weeks I added some new music. It's kind of an interlude, and also I've included it with the can open that I use as a little segue between the 2 segments. This is music that I did myself. I made it on GarageBand over on Apple, so it's all royalty free. Well, I've been putting out episodes over on YouTube because I've been getting people that listen to podcasts. They just have YouTube running at work or what have you. So I've been getting a lot of listens there. I get a copyright ding over on YouTube saying that the music is something from Hamilton, and it's called The Room Where It Happens. Now, I listened to this song. It sounds nothing like the music that I created, and this was all done with loops. I have no musical skill whatsoever, but I just took the loops that I liked and made music out of it. So it's nothing like Hamilton, but for whatever reason, Hamilton does not like my music, so I'm fighting that, but I'm going to keep it going because this has nothing to do with Hamilton. All right, that's enough bullshit. Let's get on to the interview with Ryan over at Soundtrack Your Life.
Leftovers. Or the DMV.
Number 97.
Or house cleaning. Or
Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Once upon a time.
Boring.
It was the best of times. It was the worst.
You got that right.
What's your problem?
We want new stories.
Hi, it's Frankie.
And Garrett, and we host the EverTrending Story, a weekly podcast where we bring to life a fictional story created by our own minds and some of the hottest, craziest trends from the internet.
Find us wherever you download podcasts, and be sure to join the fun on social media at EverTrendingPod.
Welcome back to the show. I'm happy to have on my friend Ryan. He's one of the co-hosts of Soundtrack Your Life, along with Brandice and Nicole. That podcast has been around since July of 2020. One of my favorite shows. Ryan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I love your show. I want to hear from you. What makes a good soundtrack?
You know, it's kind of like a black magic sort of thing where, you know, the songs work in the film, but they also are like a really cool mix of songs that you can listen to on their own.
Is like, I grew up, I'm assuming I'm older than you. I grew up in like the late 70s, early 80s. You had, especially in the mid 80s, with the John Hughes soundtracks that had track after track of new songs. In 2023, I mean, you've had the last generation of, like, between Napster and being able to download something on iTunes to the, you know, the compilation CDs. Now that's what I call music. And even now with streaming, is the soundtrack that we grew up with, is it dead or is it still alive?
I think it is still alive. I think it's not as rampant as it was in like the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the 90s was the peak of soundtracks, where, you know, they were just stuffing, you know, all 70 or 80 minutes of a CD with music, even if they weren't actually in the film. And there was definitely, I think, a quiet time after, you know, I think streaming kind of kicked in. But I think, you know, with that first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I think they showed that you can still do kind of one of those soundtracks with a bunch of, you know, jukebox songs that people love. And if they're placed in the right spots in a film, that, you know, you can still sell a bunch of copies, even though people don't really buy music anymore.
What, to you, in your opinion, makes a good soundtrack?
So first of all, like, the songs have to fit in the movie.
Yeah.
So when I watch the film, like, the songs have to, you know, make sense within the film. And, you know, in a way, like, the film and the soundtrack kind of elevate each other. And that's how, you know, it's a good soundtrack, where, you know, you might have liked the song, but then you see it, how it's used in a movie, and then you end up liking it more because it was just such an awesome, I don't want to call it synergy because that's such a, you know, corporate sort of term, but, you know, that's why it's like the special magic where they become better because of each other.
Yeah, like when I was on your show at the beginning of the year, we talked about music in the TV series The Sopranos. And even though all of these songs were older, for whatever reason, they all fit with that particular scene or that episode in general. And I just can't, and you're the expert on this. What are, outside of Guardians, which you mentioned, what are some of the more recent soundtracks that you really think should get more appreciation for how they blend the music and the film or TV series for that matter?
I don't know if people, well, I mean, it's a pretty popular show. I don't know how many of your listeners watch Ted Lasso, but I thought they did a great job of using music. I really liked how they used music in that show. The Last of Us on HBO, I know a lot of people are a really big fan of how they use music in that. And our podcast friends in the In Sync podcast, they just did an episode on the Netflix show Wednesday and how well they use music in that show as well.
Mm-hmm. Like, I haven't watched it yet, but Ruby, my wife, is watching The Bear, and I'm always like pricking my ear up like, oh, wow, that's a really good song, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think I have to watch the series now to appreciate the music that goes along with that series.
Yeah. I mean, I think TV is getting a lot better with, you know, kind of the needle drops.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference between a soundtrack and a score?
So a soundtrack typically is a bunch of what we know as songs, pop songs with vocals, sometimes written for the film, sometimes not. And then with a score, it's, a composer who is creating instrumental tracks to kind of, go alongside the film. There are very few exceptions where it's not original score. Like I think Kill Bill, it's a bunch of scores from other movies. But
Yeah.
for the most part, you hire a composer and they watch the movie and they're trying to score different beats of the film. So, I mean, most movies have a little bit of both, or they just have a score. Rarely is there a movie where it's just soundtrack, but that's kind of the difference.
Do you have a preference of the two?
I probably prefer soundtracks just because, like, when I was growing up in like my teen years, like it was a cool way to find new bands or to get extra tracks from my favorite bands. So I kind of always have like that nostalgic connection to soundtracks. But I like both. I'm a big film person, so it would be kind of difficult to not like scores at all since I watch so many movies. But, if I'm just on a random day, if I'm going to listen to music, it's most likely going to be a soundtrack versus a score, but I do like both.
Now, I have my favorites in both categories. What is your favorite score and what is your favorite soundtrack?
Ooh, favorite score is probably, I think, Punch Drunk Love, the Adam Sandler film, and that was done by John Bryan. And he's one of my favorite just musicians in general, so I love all of his stuff. As far as soundtracks go, I have to go with Purple Rain. It's such an obvious choice. Sometimes I forget it's a soundtrack because it's just so good.
And as we're recording this, if I remember correctly, today is the anniversary that film came out. So for a lot of people, that was the first time they heard from start to finish Purple Rain.
Right. Yeah. And I wish I could have experienced that. Like I was just a kid when that movie came out. So I caught most of the songs on the radio. And like when I finally saw the movie, I was like, oh, all of these songs are from this movie?
Yeah. Yeah. Like my favorites, and I'm a little bit older, so I would have to say my favorite score. And it was tough because I love Ennio Morricone. His work with the Clint Eastwood, trio of movies was all great. And there are songs from each of those scores that I love, but I would still have to go with probably The Good, the Bad, the Ugly for my favorite score. I know for My Wedding with Ruby, she walked down the aisle to Ecstasy of Gold. So I have to include The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And as far as like soundtrack from start to finish, I think I'd have to go with Pretty in Pink. That all of those songs kind of fit. They were outside of the title track, which was an older song, but the Psychedelic Furs re-recorded it for the soundtrack. They were all newer songs that you didn't know, some of the artists you didn't know. So that was one that I really loved, and I played the hell out of it as a kid.
Yeah, it's a great soundtrack and a great score.
Yeah. For you, is there that you know of or that you could think of off the top of your head, is there a great soundtrack for a lousy movie, and vice versa? Was there just, a horrible soundtrack, but the movie was great?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if you can have a great movie with a horrible soundtrack. I think you can have a horrible movie with a great soundtrack, and I think the 90s was full of those. But it's kind of hard to say now because I think a lot of these movies that were kind of deemed horrible when they came out have become like cult classics. So like a movie like Empire Records has a great soundtrack, and that movie tanked so bad at the box office, but now it's kind of caught this like second life.
Yeah.
So that would I don't want to call it a terrible movie, but like it was panned when it came out, and it almost seemed like the soundtrack was outselling the movie.
Like we've known each other on like social media for a while now, and I remember, I don't know, maybe it was a year or so ago, I think I mentioned on one of my podcasts about Cicerone, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to like start the process. And you sent me an email, and I remember this, like, I can't believe you're not. And you are. Why are you a Cicerone?
So, a little background on me, I guess, is that I work in IT, but I was kind of burning out on it a few years ago, and my wife had suggested, like, you're meeting a lot of friends through, going to different breweries and through basically being on like these different forums and discords talking about beer. Like, it seems to be a passion of yours. So why don't you kind of explore what it might look like to work at a brewery, or, maybe you'd enjoy that if you want to change careers. So I took like a Cicerone class, and I ended up taking the level 1 course, and it was a lot of fun. Like, I learned some stuff. Some stuff I already knew, but I did learn a lot of things. But it felt like everyone in my class was already working at like some restaurant or some bar, and they were basically being forced there. And I was like the only person there because they just wanted to like learn more about beer. But it ended up not working out. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it worked out, because like a year later, like COVID hit, and I probably would have been out of a job if I had switched careers at that point. But,
Yeah.
I think I'm just like you. I like to talk about beer. I like to learn about beer. And, it just seemed like something that made sense to do.
Yeah. So the episode, like, this is going to come out in a couple of weeks, but the episode that's coming out in a couple days is I talked to people with the Cicerone program. And since I spoke to him, I figure, all right, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to take the level 1, the certified beer server course. And yeah, some of it, like, it's common knowledge, like we knew. I think your casual beer drinker might not have known, but somebody that's like an enthusiast knew. But there were certain things with different styles, like a Belgian golden as opposed to a Belgian double, things like that. Really, like, oh, wow, I really need to hit up on these as I was going through the test questions and the flashcards. How do you think that benefited you as just a beer drinker?
Yeah, I think it covers most of like the more classic styles. And I think, I remember learning about kind of the origins of the porter and how it isn't just a different sort of stout.
Yeah.
I think now, like, it's hard to tell what's a porter and a stout, but it originated as like a 3.5% beer. And like, that's something I didn't know. And, no one makes it in that style anymore. So
No,
it's not like you would find that. So it was cool to learn some history like that.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool, learning the history of that. And I'd love to try a 3.5% porter just to see what that tastes like. There's very few, like maybe you could find an English mild every now and then that hits that ABV mark. But yeah, it's very hard to find something even that low in alcohol.
Yeah. And then one myth that was kind of busted for me in the class was that, when you're pouring a bottle, that you're supposed to leave like a decent amount of head when you do the pour, because that's how it releases the carbon dioxide. So then you won't be as gassy later.
Yeah, you won't be as bloated. Yes. So we're talking about beer. I see you sipping on one. I'm having one. What are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking, it's a red plum saison from Side Project out of St. Louis.
Okay, very good.
And it's a 6% beer, so it's good for like a night before work.
Yeah. Yeah, Side Project's really good.
I love Side Project.
I'm having one from AleSmith and Beechwood. It's a collaboration they had. I think I talked about it on YouTube a few weeks ago. Tower of Flower. It's an IPA, and they use Galaxy, Cashmere, and Nelson hops. I think this is really good. 2 great breweries out there.
Yeah, they're 2 of my favorites. And Beechwood is actually just a few miles from my house.
Oh, really? All right, cool. Yeah, I love everything they put out. And I don't know the font they use, but the font that they use and their artwork is almost as good as their beer.
Yeah, they're really cool cans that they release.
So you mentioned like you're out there in California. What part of California are you in?
So I'm in Orange County, but I'm like right outside of Long Beach. Like I go like half a mile and I'm in LA. technically.
All
so.
right. Is there like a brewery or a spot near you that you feel should get more love? Like, we all know the breweries that are out there, but what's a brewery that if somebody were to come to town that they might not be familiar with, but you think this is a spot you really need to go to?
So I'm part of the Highland Park beer membership. They're in LA. They started in an area called Highland Park, obviously. But they have a spot that's right over by Dodger Stadium. I think all their beers are great. They do, their barrel age program is good. Their sours are great. And they also make really good hoppy beers. Their flagship beer is the Timbo Pils. It's a hoppy Pilsner. It's like 5.8%. And I could drink that every day for the rest of my
All
life.
right.
It's like a desert island beer. I don't think they have like I don't think they've grown nationally to be like this, hot brewery, but I think they do everything well. And I think that they're on the rise for sure.
Yeah. How's Three Weavers out there? I remember when they started, I don't know how I came about it, but this was probably 10 years ago through social media. And I was like one of their original Kickstarter backers, but I think they're still around. How are they doing?
I think they're doing okay. I haven't had a Three Weavers beer in quite a while, but I think I still see them at restaurants and stuff. Like they have a pretty good, footprint in like the Southern California area.
Okay. Yeah, at the time I was interested, like, all right, it's Kickstarter. This was like the start of Kickstarter and supporting like new breweries that wanted to start. And I thought it was pretty cool that it was like a woman-owned brewery. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll throw some money into this. So at least they're still around. I think somewhere I have a hat somewhere for donating money on Kickstarter to Three Weavers.
That's cool.
Well, Ryan, I appreciate you coming on, talking about your show. Tell everyone once again where they could find your show, Soundtrack Your Life. The floor is yours.
You can find Soundtrack Your Life on all your different podcast players and apps. You can go to www.soundtrackyourlife.net if you want to just go to one place to kind of find more information. We're also on Instagram at Instagram.com/soundtrackcast and on Twitter at twitter.com/soundtrack_your. And that's how you can get a hold of us. And, we have new episodes coming out every couple weeks, but we're going to take the month of July off to recharge.
Oh, absolutely. You got to recharge those batteries. Are there any soundtracks coming out that you're like really stoked about? Like, I know the movie just came out and I'm really looking forward to seeing like Asteroid City. Are there any movies or soundtracks that you really want to hear and watch the movie?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about Asteroid City. Love Wes Anderson. Alexander Desplat always does amazing work on the scores, and I believe they have a song from is it Jarvis Cocker and So George? So I'm looking forward to that. So George did all those awesome Bowie covers from The Life Aquatic.
Yeah.
So excited to hear what he's done for Wes this time around. The Guardians of the Galaxy 3 soundtrack just came out, and I'm just excited that they put the Replacements in that movie.
Oh, yeah. Love the Replacements.
So I'm just happy. I mean, I have I Will Dare like on vinyl on like 3 different, things, but I'm just happy that, they're getting some Marvel money, and that Space Hog song in the meantime is in the movie too. And I love that song as well. So that's a soundtrack that just dropped that I'm excited about listening to. And I think Asteroid City is the big one. Like, I think I'm going to go with my co-host to watch it as like a team.
Yeah, I'll have to catch that in the next like week or so. You just mentioned the Replacements, and I've loved the Replacements from day one, but that would have to be probably the worst show I've ever seen.
They are notorious for that.
Yeah, they opened for Tom Petty. This was probably Full Moon Fever, I'm thinking, and Paul was just hammered drunk, and it was like bad. Like they didn't play any like hits. They just like, he was drunk and incoherent, and he walked out for the encore and just couldn't even whistle straight, but he tried to whistle the Andy Griffith song, and that was the encore. But then I saw them a couple years later when they reformed to do Riot Fest, and
I saw them at Riot Fest too.
Yeah, it made up for it, but as much as I love the Replacement, that still had to be the worst show I've ever seen.
I saw them at Riot Fest Denver, and they were able to keep it together until the encore. And when they walked out for the encore, they all switched instruments.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't very good, but it was kind of like, well, I guess you were going to get something like this at some point from them.
Yeah, you had to expect that from the Replacements.
Yeah, at least they held it together for the regular set,
Yeah. All right. Well, Ryan, thanks so much again for coming on. I appreciate it. You could find their show, Soundtrack Your Life. You could find them wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're listening to this, you could find Soundtrack Your Life. Ryan, thank you again, sir. I'll talk to you down the road.
Yeah. Thank you. And congrats on your level 1 Cicerone.
All right. Thank you, sir. We'll see you later.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Beer in Front. I thank you very much for listening. Once again, I want to thank Ryan over at the great Soundtrack Your Life podcast. You could listen everywhere. If you're listening to this show, you can listen to Ryan. So when you're done listening, head over to Soundtrack Your Life. Check their show out. It's a really good one. And stay tuned in a couple days. You're going to have a quick 15-minute episode of Beer in Front. If you need to get a hold of me, you could email me, dave@beerinfront.com. Unless you're the Hamilton people, then just leave me alone. But if you could get me there, you could find me on all the socials, including Threads. Yes, if you're on Threads, find me there at Beer in Front. I will talk to you in a couple days, and remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. All right, I'll see you in a few days.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Leftovers or the DMV
Number 97.
or house cleaning or Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply.